So today I have what is probably my last video before Edge of Fate, and this is how to set up your builds for Edge of Fate. This is going to be a little bit more technical than previous videos, and my videos end up being technical, but it's going to dig deep into using dim or whatever to set up your build and get it mostly ready for Edge of Fate so that when you start, you can be completely good and maybe just switch out a class item, and that's it. With all that, let's just go in and get into it. I'm Engineer. I'm going to give you just a few general guidelines. I'm going to briefly go over how armor works again, and then I'm going to give you 3 build examples, one for Hunter, one for Warlock, and one for Titan. And these be 3 different setups. The first is a pure stat focus on just focusing on the grenade stat. Second is working with exotic class items. And the last is what I would call a complex build, where you have a bunch of stats you're kind of trying to juggle and you care about. So just a few disclaimers, like always, this is pre-release and things may change. I only cover PvE, and that's pretty much it. So just some general guidelines. I still recommend that you create your goal builds and using my armor stat planner or whatever tool you're using, and focus on using tier 3 stats, except for exotics, which are going to be limited to tier 2. The reason for this is tier 3 stats are most similar to current stats. In addition, tier 3 is probably going to be what's most accessible within the first week or so. It sounds like when we get to the end of the legend campaign, you will be at a level where you can get tier 3 gear sometimes, and as you climb your power, you will get better access to that. So keep that in mind. Any builds I've made in recent videos has had tier 3 stats except for tier 2 exotics, because that's the assumption I've been working off of. So once you do that, you want to determine what your Armor 3.0 class item will contribute. These have stats now, so you want to subtract that from the total stats because that's not included. So as you can see in this little table below, that's what I've done. I've also built this into my armor stat planner at the bottom, so it will show you what you need without stats, and then sometimes it's good to factor out the fonts. Say you were trying to get above, let's say 150 of intellect. You want to do that without your font mod so that you can get that to 100 in say dim or D2 armor picker, and then let the fonts and the stat mods and more push it over. Once you've got all that set up, use your armor picker of choice and make some builds that will feel really weird to you, like 0 resilience and maximum mobility. It's okay, it'll be cool. It's been feeling super weird for me, but it's kind of interesting, and I'm glad that things are being shaken up. Brief description of how armor works with Armor 3.0. In case you haven't followed my slew of videos on this, existing armor converts 1-to-1. Mobility stats become weapons, resilience stats become health, recovery stats become class, discipline becomes grenade, intellect becomes super, and strength becomes melee. Legendary class items are going to need to be replaced ASAP. Your current legendary class items that don't have any stats on them except for the masterwork are going to be fully outclassed by Armor 3.0 class items that get full stats of somewhere between 50 to 75 stats, and that is a lot of free points that you want to take advantage of as soon as possible. Exotic class items will work differently. One thing to note, they will lose their artifice slots, so do not invest in that in the next week, though I don't know why you would be. These are going to be assigned tier 2 stats, which is a 63 stat total, depending on the perk combo. The primary and the secondary stats will be assigned by an archetype, and that's going to be decided by the first column perk. Now, the tertiary stat, which will be around 13 points, will be determined based on the combo. Just to give you an example, so Inmost Light is a Paragon archetype, so that'll be primary super stat, secondary melee stat. Now, if you did Inmost Light and Syntheseps is obviously a melee perk, but they can't give you melee stats as tertiary, because then you would have more than the maximum of 30 for base stats. So what we've seen in previews is that goes to class. We have not seen every combination so far. We've seen a lot of the Warlock exotic class items just because of what they were on when they were previewing it, but we'll just have to see how those shake out. You can make some educated guesses, and if you're not sure, I can make educated guesses for you. Just ask in the comments or on Discord. I'm good at guessing things like that. I might be wrong though. How stats roll on Armor 3.0. It's good just to know this a little bit so that you can be aware of how things are changing. First, armor only rolls into 3 out of the 6 stats. Instead of rolling across all 6 of them and always having at least 2 points, you only roll in 3 stats. The highest stat is your primary, your second highest stat is your secondary, and these are determined by your armor archetype, and there are 6 of these at launch: Bulwark, Brawler, Grenadier, Paragon, Specialist, and Gunner. There will be ghost mods to have a higher chance of getting the archetype you want, and I think that will be very helpful. Hopefully that chance is pretty high. Now the third stat, which we call the tertiary stat, is completely random among the other 4 stats. So you have a 1 in 4 shot of getting the full set of 3 stats you want, but this is still much better than now. The way stats roll now is insane, honestly, and the spreads are crazy, and they usually never get very focused stats. Another cool thing to note, from what we've seen in previews, the primary stat always gets 28 to 30 points. The secondary stat gets about 1/3 of the total, so it can be anywhere from about 18 to 25 stats. And then the tertiary gets whatever the leftovers is. On like tier 2, it's about 13 or so. I think at most on the highest stat gear, it'll come out to 20 stats. That is the absolute max you can get on tertiary. That's just good for the points. Once again, I will have an armor stat planner linked in the description, and this has all this accounted for. I've set it up and done way too much thinking about this, so you don't necessarily have to. With that, let's start getting into some of the builds. This will be a little bit different video. You're going to see me playing around in dim a lot and trying to show you how this works. If you're not familiar with dim and this stuff doesn't make any sense to you, you can try and do it manually in game, but I find dim to be a much easier interface for it. So first up is what I call a pure stat focus build. And for this, I'm doing a hunter build with Youngaham Crow's Spine. These stats are taken directly from my hunter build video that I just put out. And the goal here is maximum grenade stat. We want some super, we want some class, and we probably want a little bit of melee, but the main thing here is we want our grenade stat as high as humanly possible. So all we're gonna do is put on our highest discipline gear, equip discipline stat mods, and then we'll also end up including a font mod. So you can see my dim right now. This is the build I'm looking for. If you don't already have a copy made, hit this edit copy button to make a duplicate of it. And then once you get your copy, you want to change any mods you want in it, and then go to optimize armor. If you have any existing build stats, hit this X here, get rid of them. And then if you have any existing stat priorities, I would also get rid of those too, because it'll just confuse things. And then make sure under pinned items that nothing is selected. The tricky part here is we technically want to try and get over 100 discipline, which isn't really supported in here. D2 Armor Picker has it, but it also doesn't have loadout support, and that's why I end up using dim. So what we will do is we'll go down to pinned items here and hit this plus symbol, and we will type base stat : discipline greater than or equal to 25. I think that's a good rule of thumb to use to get you there. And once you've typed that, I would copy this because we're going to need it a few times. And then you just want to look through the armor here. So this is high discipline, but it's high resilience. And in this build, I don't want resilience. I would like possibly mobility because that becomes weapons, but ideally recovery would be really nice. So there's a high mobility roll, and then here's an even higher resilience roll. But out of those three, I would end up picking the mobility roll because we're mostly dumping the health stat in Armor 3.0. So you select that and you got one piece. Now you do want to make sure you select your exotic. So just go into here and pick that as well. It will automatically select it if you have it selected up here, and then just paste in that same query again. See, we don't have a lot of options on the chest side, but we've got a high recovery one here, and then we've got a even higher recovery one. So that sounds even better. So we select that. Then we just need to do this one more time for the legs. We have a high mobility roll, and then we have a high resilience roll. So once again, we're going to choose mobility roll, and that puts us here. Now, a normal setting of dim is to automatically add stat mods, and that's very helpful. But in this case, you can see that it is filtering in mobility mods and discipline mods. We can even set this to 10 discipline and it'll get us there, but it is only putting in 2 discipline mods. So what we will have to do is uncheck this actually, and this is only for these pure stat focused ones. So at this point, we want to add the stat mods ourselves. And one thing you will have to plan out is think about how many +5 mods versus +10 mods you can add. One thing to note is that these mods will be fully changing with Edge of Fate, so you're going to need to kind of jot this down or take a screenshot of it or something. And another change that is happening is that the +5 mods will all have a energy cost of 1, and the +10s will all have an energy cost of 3, so that's very helpful. So generally what I am doing here is 3 +10s and then 2 +5s. Select that, and you can see now that our grenade stat is up to 12.5 tiers, which is about 125, which is great. Also make sure that if you're trying to push as high as possible, you want to see the stats without the font mods. If we do check this, you can see it goes up to 15.5, which is very good. Beyond that, we've picked the armor, we've picked the mods, that's it. You just hit update loadout, check everything over, and then just save it. And that's pretty much it. Pretty straightforward. This one we didn't have to lean on the stat calculations too much because it is focused almost entirely on the grenade stat, but generally that is how you're approaching it. One other thing to note is that right now in existing stats are broken into 2 buckets. So mobility, resilience, and recovery share a pool of stats, and then discipline, intellect, and strength share a pool of stats. Because we're going full in on grenade, we're going to have very low melee on that build, and we'll probably have decently low intellect. This is going to be a build where Armor 3.0 stats are going to be better pretty quickly. So we'll be looking out for some Grenadier archetype drops, and we'll probably be replacing pieces as we go. Moving on to the next one, this is an exotic class item example, and this is for a Prismatic Lightning Surge build. So the main goal here is that we want to max out the melee stat. Now without the class or the font, all we need to do is just try and get to 100 melee, and then with our other stats, we want to probably split them between super, class, or grenade, which is intellect, recovery, or discipline respectively. One thing to note here is you do see a high health stat. This is because this was built with Armor 3.0 stats, and because of the brawler archetype, which gives melee and health, we end up with more health than we necessarily needed. So don't focus on resilience in this at all. Once again, we are coming over to dim. If you don't have a copy already set up, just hit edit copy. It will make a copy, and then you go in there, and then once you have it set up and you have the mods how you want, then you can hit optimize armor. I'm actually just noticing as I look at this that I don't have my mods set up exactly how I want. I am missing a font of melee, so I will go ahead and slot that in. Right now I have 2 heavy-handed mods, so I'm going to take away one of those and put a font of vigor, which is equivalent to a font of melee. Now, once again, because we've added a font, it's checked on this include font mod stats, so we want to uncheck this so that we hit 100 without the font mods. Now, I'm going to reset the stat priorities just so you can see what we're doing. If you're not aware, you can reorder these. Strength is our main focus here, so we want to get that to 10. One very important thing when working with exotic class items is you need to make sure that you have the right one selected. So you just search here, Spirit of the Syntheseps and Spirit of the Necrotic, which is what I'm using now. If you're using Inmost Light instead or whatever, cool. One thing to note before we get into that, I'm planning around a Necrotic Syntheseps class item, and it is expected that this will have a primary stat of melee, a secondary stat of health, and a tertiary stat of class. On the class item planner, just enter in the stat values from what we have seen and what Bungie has told us. The primary stat will be 30, the secondary stat will be 20, and the tertiary will be 13. So just enter in those numbers, and then you can get accurate readouts of what it is without the class item and without fonts. So we've got those incorporated. Make sure you do in some way before you start creating your build. Back to this is gonna be a lot simpler because we are working within 100 stats. We don't need to hit above 100 necessarily, so we just set strength to 100. After that, remembering that our focuses are discipline and recovery and intellect. Let's see, resilience at the bottom. What a world this is. I think for this build, I'm going to be more focused on intellect, and then I will work on discipline and recovery. A discipline does feel a little bit low, so I'm going to see if I can drop a point there and maybe get a few points in the other ones, and I can. With that, probably take the mobility after the resilience, but it looks like both end up being at least about 40. And that's pretty much it. Got all of our mods good. You will notice that I have an item here that I got from Episode Echoes, focusing with failsafe, and it's not maxed out right now. Don't max this armor out now. In Edge of Fate, every piece of armor automatically gets the full energy without investing any resources. Save some resources, it's cool. Then you hit Update Loadout, and you can just check everything over one more time and hit Save Changes, and you're all good. For a slightly more complex stats build, I am doing my Titan Queer Storm Surge build. This is Arc Thundercrash focused with a focus on Storm's Keep Barricade. So we do want as much super as we can because that's where a lot of our damage comes from, but we also want a pretty high class stat. In a perfect world, we'd also have a really high weapon stat, but it's just not feasible. We will possibly be able to get some of that, but honestly, if you don't get the weapon stat of well over 100, it's not really worth it. And getting 2 stats up close to 200 is nearly impossible unless you have very perfectly rolled armor. Beyond that, melee is a good stat too because Queers of the Falling Star gives you super energy when you get melee kills, so we'd like that, and then grenade's always good. So let's go look once again. In case you're skipping around this video, you want to make a copy of your build so you can still use it until next week. You hit edit copy and it will create a copy like this. Once you have all the mods set up how you want to, you can see I've my old build here and the new one. I've added in a font of wisdom, which is going to be equivalent to a font of super. But once you get your mod set up, you can hit optimize armor. Once again, we want to wipe out the stat priority ranges. In this one, we could probably automatically add the stat mods. Now, like the hunter video, we're pretty focused on intellect, so we really want to see what type base stat. Intellect greater than or equal to 20. Now, fortunately on my Titan, I have not had a lot of luck farming for these. So all I have right now is this helmet with decent mobility and intellect. So I will probably pin this one and then just let the armor picker do the rest. Now our priority is intellect, so we're going to drag that up to the top and just go ahead and hit 10 on that. After that, we're going to rearrange some of these other stats. So strength is definitely up there. Resilience is down. Recovery is actually our second highest focus because we want to keep that barricade up as much as possible. And just checking back over here, we would like to get the class stat to about 80 because then our class item will fill in the last like 15 or so and get us to right at 100 class. Recovery becoming class, we want to get that to 8 stats, and then you can see we're pretty low on everything else here. So then it's just kind of picking what you will. Strength, once again, is a pretty big priority. And then mobility is not a bad idea, and neither is discipline. And that kind of limits us down to just this. Your armor may give you different results, but that's kind of how it works. You want to have a priority list, and then you just want to kind of balance things as much as possible. But with that, I'm pretty satisfied. I think the class item that if I can get a Paragon class item, that will give me super and melee and definitely round it out. So I'm going to hit update loadout and hit save. And that loadout is good for Edge of Fate. In closing, this is not necessary, but it does make it easier to hop right in and just play the game. Your build will be solid and it will just get better. Just keep an eye out for better stat gear or class items. The way stats are changing, some stats like resilience are becoming less valuable. I didn't go in depth in this video, but the health stat is just generally not that valuable in PvE because up to 100, it's really just giving you the benefit of a single 1 energy mod recuperation. So all those resilience rolls you have are probably not going to be great. Now, other stats are increasing a lot in value. Intellect is one of the worst stats currently, and in Edge of Fate, it becomes one of the strongest stats because it can give up to 45% extra super damage. So another thing to know is that whatever build you make, you're going to need to keep updating it. A big goal of Armor 3.0 is keeping you engaged with your armor, making you look at your stats, making you tweak it a little bit, looking at set values and trying to get higher tier gear. So it's not like the old days where you're just sort of like, I'm good, this is done, I don't need to touch it. We will maybe get to a point like that, but it's probably going to be a good while. There will be some builds that will be better in all Armor 3.0 gear. I still think it is nice to set them up now, but it's going to be a lot easier to replace pieces. Like the Young Ahamkara Spine build or generally any grenade build, just put on the Grenadier archetype Ghost mod and just slot those in as they seem to be better than what you have. A big one, these third-party apps are likely to be disrupted for a while at launch. I don't know when they will have the full functionality back and work with the new stats and all the new mods. There's so much changing here and it's going to be a lot of work for them. I believe D2 Armor Picker does have a beta build up right now that kind of works, but once again, everything's going to be complicated and the names of things are going to be changing in the API and it's going to be disrupted. So you should get comfortable with making builds the old-fashioned way in Destiny. Right now, take advantage of those apps, but definitely look at tweaking them and just keep an eye on your stats and juggle things around. Because mods are fully changing names, usually what happens is they just basically break the old mods and then add new ones. So say you put a font of wisdom in, you're going to need to remember that you did that and change it to a font of super. Take some screenshots, whatever you need to do, but just keep that in mind and just really think about your builds. It's going to be pretty hard for people who copy dim links. This is going to be very much customized and built how you want to. One last thing I'd mention is that I would recommend you strip your mod sockets via dim before launch, just before launch. You don't want to do it now while you're still playing, but you want to do it shortly before because it will take every mod off of all your gear and that will avoid some weirdness and bugs. Sometimes those old mods are really hard to work with and like dim can't change them, so then it locks things out and then things break and it's not fun. Real quick, let me show you how to do that. You go to dim, you go to your inventory tab and you can search is armor and it will select all your armor and you'll hit these 3 little dots here and you will select strip sockets and it will take a while. Go take a walk, do it before you go to bed, whatever, but it's going to take every mod off them. You can also do is weapon and do the exact same thing. You can see how much stuff I have in my vault. It's mostly exotic class items, but once again, just strip sockets. A lot of the mods will be changing. I'd probably recommend you do this, and especially for seasonal mods. There might be better search queries for this. I will let you know in the comments if I find out a better way to do that, but definitely a thing that will help you so that you don't run into weird bugs as we try this new armor system. As we wrap up, I just want to thank all my supporters, my channel members, Louis, Equitas, Mirage, Sushi Juice, Maddie the Ace, Davey0011, Infernal Park 111, and Aradriel. Also thanks to Spider Reviver for checking my math. I didn't have any math in this video, thankfully, but he's been great in the last few weeks. If you want to support even more cool guides and tools, definitely feel free to join the channel. If you join the channel as a member like this, I will definitely at some point make a build build video for you. So if that's something you want to see, that's a good way to do it. But I also just like cool build ideas. Hopefully this video has been helpful to you. I really appreciate all the support on the channel. I'm getting really close to 5,000 subscribers, which is a crazy number that I never thought I would reach. So I do appreciate all that, and all the people who have spread the word and tell some of the other people they know that play Destiny about the work I do. With that, I'm excited for the Edge of Fate. I can't wait to make a ton of build videos, and I will see you then. Thanks.